want to call in, I know somebody does, and save us from making total fools of or Brian mostly from making a total fool of himself because I can handle this. It's 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492. If you're a little too shy to call, you can hop on to Facebook. Look us up at the Paranormal Encyclopedia on Facebook. We've got a live chat that I do have open next to me, so you can ask me questions there if you're outside of the U.S. or otherwise uncomfortable calling in.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I met a fan over the weekend.
Of the show?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they said the sound of your voice makes them want to punch you.
Thanks, Brian.
just thought I'd toss that out there.
Is this a true story, or are you screwing with me? With you, it's hard to be sure.
It's actually true. It's actually like partially true. They were saying it. I think they were saying it jokingly, but
I'm sort of curious as if this is somebody I know.
No, I don't think so.
Well, if that fan of the show is out there, wants to call in and say hello.
If you want to identify yourself, I'm not gonna blow your
know
cover.
Who to send the hitman after?
Yeah, I'm not gonna blow your cover. I just wanted people to know that we do apparently have listeners, and they do occasionally
want to punch me in the face.
Make
apparently.
contact. Yeah.
It's not the worst thing I've ever been told by a long shot.
Probably not. I figured you've heard it before.
Not even sure that's the worst thing I've been told this week.
Wow. That's a week.
Well, that's normal for me, just because I had the tendency to get bored, go on the YouTube and troll the trolls.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it's usually a good way to tick people off.
You're not supposed to feed the trolls. Don't you see the signs?
But it's so much fun to feed trolls. So, Beth, are you openly admitting to being a troll?
Depends. What's my target this week?
Yeah, Beth, you might have to join in and participate a little more this week than most, since we don't have a firm topic and thing ready to go.
See, if I had a little bit of money for prep, we could have done a critical thinking episode, and I would have done the thing I've been promising to do for ages, which is to overdose myself on homeopathic sleeping tablets. Live on air.
Yeah, no. How about not? Because,
no, I'll totally do it.
Yeah, I know you would. That's why I'm telling you no. As your producer,
Why?
I tell you no. I'm pulling that leash.
That one ain't gonna work. You know, homeopathy is meaningless. It's sugar pills. I can show you the studies that prove it.
It depends on who's you're getting.
Well, that's why I would do
the. Some have some things in there that you are not supposed to be anywhere near a human.
This is true,
with.
which is why you do the research. I do the research first and make sure it's actually homeopathic remedy and not the nonsense that throws in stuff that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, I mean there are some real ones. There's like melatonin and
that would not be a homeopathic remedy.
Right, that's more of
that would be the difference. You're not
an actual vitamin. Or
for anyone who doesn't know and is curious why this is a soapbox for me. So homeopathic remedy is a very modern, and people think this is like, I had somebody on YouTube just the other day tell me it's been practiced for thousands of years. It hasn't even been practiced for like 200 years. It was created in the 18th century. So, okay, 200 years. It's been around for about 200 years. And it's this idea that you can take, that one, if you take a substance that causes a symptom and dilute it enough, it will treat the symptom. So if you take, say, a herb that'll give you a fever if you eat it, weaken it, it'll prevent a fever. Aside from the fact the scientific grounds for that is dicey at the best of times.
Yeah, that just doesn't even sound intuitive.
Well, I think the logic is it's sort of like the vaccine thing where you take a small dose of it to prevent the disease, and that's what they think. The people who think it works, that's what they think.
Yeah.
But that's not.
But vaccines is a whole different thing. Usually you're taking a dead version and you're doing
or at least a dead or weakened version. Sometimes it is weakened.
It's to teach your immune system.
So basically to create antibodies against the disease in case you ever actually catch it. It basically works the same way as catching the disease. It doesn't work for substance. It works for diseases because that's the way our immune system works. Something similar can actually work for certain allergies.
Oh, okay.
Like a legitimate remedy if you have bad hay fever, eat local honey. Because you get smaller doses of the pollens, your body can build up a resistance to it.
Yeah, that makes sort of sense. Kind of like the way I've been building up an immunity to iocane powder over the years.
Yeah, exactly. But
just in case I'm ever challenged in a battle of wits.
Only by a Sicilian, though.
Only by a
only
Sicilian.
by a Sicilian when death is on the line. And Amisha pointed out, of course, there are herbal remedies which run the gamut, and there are plenty of very effective herbal remedies. I'm not going to start bashing them. Although, ironically, there are a number of cases where we have medical substitutes that are synthetic that are better than the herbal. Case in point, foxglove. Foxglove's a naturally occurring plant that can give you a heart attack if you eat it raw. We have a medicine based on it called digitalis.
Oh yeah.
Which is a highly effective heart medication. We have a synthetic form of digitalis that doesn't actually use the original plant that is just as effective with fewer side effects.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
this is chemistry.
This is why sometimes science is a good thing. You know?
Yes.
It actually can improve things and make them better once we understand how they work.
Just like with marijuana and the experiments they're doing to increase certain, the THC and decrease other chemicals, figuring out how to get the medical benefits up and the what's the word I'm looking for? The part that gets you high down.
Yeah, that I think is the THC, is the hallucinogen. Or
The mild. It is technically a mild hallucinogen.
Right, but you can remove that and have, say, like the cannabis oil. Like there are people that promote that, but that's pretty much has no toxic effects, from what I understand.
Well, I think the answer would be fewer, not necessarily no. The thing is, this is an important point that comes up with a lot of alternatives.
Well, it's not a hallucinogen in any way, is what they say.
One important point that comes up in alternative medicine a lot, and you'll hear this all the time with homeopathy, is that it has no side effects. You know, when one of the surest signs something doesn't work is it doesn't have any side effects. Because the very fact it's having an effect on your body means that it's altering your body's chemistry, and it's going to cause problems, especially if you take too much of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not bad-mouthing marijuana. I'm personally very much in favor of legalization.
Yeah, me too.
Moderation.
Yes.
Moderation.
Legalize it, tax it, treat it the same way we treat tobacco and tobacco and alcohol.
Yeah.
Which are more dangerous anyway.
But the paper industry and the pharmaceuticals.
I don't think it's those industries that are against it so much. It's
originally,
tobacco and the alcohol lobby that don't want it legalized.
Well, also, the pharmaceutical companies have started to become a big head runner with that in general.
Because it treats a lot of illnesses better than
or at least
most
things
big
where
pharma drugs.
the only thing that can be treated is the symptoms, such as the epilepsy and then things like that, and the seizures that come along with it. A lot of those medications have some severe side effects. They'll treat the main symptom, but you have 15 other ones that might hide the fact that this thing is still going on. So it's like they've become, especially in the last 5-10 years, the biggest up and comer against it, even as much, if not more so, than the alcohol and tobacco industries.
I honestly was not aware of that.
It's going to cut into their profits majorly. If
I know historically it just comes down to it's safer than cigarettes. It has fewer side effects and it has actual medical benefits.
Yeah,
the tobacco industry hates this stuff.
Yeah,
for good reason. From a financial standpoint, for good reason.
Yeah, the whole paper thing, that was more back in the early days when hemp.
Even though Edison grew it, Jefferson
would have been able to.
Jefferson, a couple other founding fathers too, as I recall.
Yeah,
they were also smoking it. I'm pretty.
Well, and now that the things like deforestation and whatnot are becoming such a real concern, it does seem silly to me that we're not, looking more seriously into alternative stuff like hemp for things like paper and products that we use all the time that
we have a comment in the chat I wanted to share actually. Oh, Will Patrizi commented, several pharmaceutical companies are just about to come to market with cannabis-derived meds.
That makes sense.
And I know that they've been working on it for years. I have had friends who had cancer, and the various THC pills and things like that that have come out over the years.
Yeah.
The sad reality of which being, from the friends I know that have been on those things, there are people that have negative reactions to the pills that don't have negative reactions to natural marijuana.
Yeah,
which all comes back to legalize it, just legalize it. Tax it so the government can make some nice revenue and legalize this stupid thing already.
Yeah, work the stuff out, because a lot of people swear that it for like depression that it does a lot more effective treatment with a lot less side effects than most like antidepressants.
I mean, you should have had the good point that deforestation issues are not caused by paper, or for that matter, lumber. Those are common myths. The main problem that we have with deforestation, particularly with the rainforests being cut down, is cattle farming. Because the thing that you run into is people that plant for trees or plant for lumber are acutely aware that if they cut it all down and don't plant something else, they're not going to have any product. So they keep planting it. Now, on the other hand, it takes a lot of land to raise cattle.
Yeah.
And when they cut and particularly South America, where they're very poor and they need a lot of space to have their cattle on it, they cut it down. They're not replanting.
Yeah. Well, okay, then that's a different issue. They should really look into maybe having something other than cattle, like goats, which a lot of the world eats, and goats take up a lot less land and are a lot easier to keep and raise for meat.
Yeah, and for that matter, there's also the ongoing
chickens
thing of vegetables.
Well, yeah, I'm not getting into the whole vegan thing.
Well, I'm not necessarily. I'm not advocating for veganism.
Yeah,
but
because I'm sorry, I want meat.
Use of land.
Oh no, it is. But I mean, see, my thinking is we already have a lot. We already have a lot of land, that cattle use. Let's just use what we have. You don't need to. You don't need to clear more.
Here would be my thing. We've already got surpluses of food.
Yeah,
we need to distribute it better.
Well, that's the other thing, is the way that the world is set up.
I'm generally a capitalist kind of guy, but people should not be starving in this country when we have a surplus of food. Children should not be starving in this country when we have a surplus of food.
Yeah, we have like enough to feed the world if we wanted to. We just,
at the very least, I don't know about the world, but we definitely have enough to feed our own population and then some.
I've heard that we could actually end world hunger if we even took half a whack at it. It's just a matter of there's no profit in it, or not enough profit. So
there's a couple of interrelated issues with it. Part of it is fear of genetically modified organisms, because one of the most efficient ways to start cutting down on that would be some of the GMOs that we have, and people have been terrified off of them.
Which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, we've been genetically modifying our food for thousands of years. We just haven't been doing it.
You're absolutely right.
In a lab.
In a lab, but a lot of the GMO stuff is perfectly safe.
Folks, if you're really afraid of GMOs, I got some bad news for you. First, don't eat bananas. There haven't been what we've been eating as bananas have not been a wild plant for at least a couple hundred years. For one thing, look at a wild banana. It doesn't look anything like what you buy in the grocery store.
Oh yeah, the
lemons,
Cavendish.
I think it's like either lemons or oranges. I think it's like lemons, where because of the citrus and how it was crossbred over years just from sheer pollination, and where it was transplanted from place to place. That was eventually, it took hundreds of years.
Oh yeah. There's a number of foods that bear no resemblance to their original.
Bananas in particular, there's a massive outbreak of some kind that killed off most of the strains, to the point that, ever noticed how...
Well, it was a particular strain back. I remember that because I've
but
seen
like most of the bananas we eat are clones.
Yeah, back in the it was like back in the 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
The big Mikes were sweeter and creamier and larger.
Which is why
variety bananas.
Banana flavoring tastes so much different than actual banana. It's so much sweeter than actual bananas.
It does.
Yeah,
they got wiped out, and then we had to turn to the Cavendish.
Another good example: go find me a wild chicken. They don't exist. It's something that we've been tampering with for a few thousand years.
Oh god. Well, and you look at the difference between a wild boar and a domesticated pig.
This is true.
Yeah.
For that matter, and outside of parts of Asia, we don't generally eat them. Dogs.
Oh boy.
Most breeds of dog in the Western, pretty much all breeds, I think, in the Western world are originally genetically modified wolves.
Oh yeah, yeah. Almost all the various breeds of dogs came
We've been
from wolves.
crossbreeding them for something like 10,000 years, I want to say.
Oh yeah, one of
And-
the oldest genetic experiments that we've done for
And
various
two,
reasons.
purebreds are basically a 19th century genetics experiment.
Yeah,
There's a reason that several modern breeds of purebred have massive genetic problems, like bulldogs not being able to breathe because their noses become so tight and so small.
oh yeah. Well, they get bred for certain specific traits, and the breeders at the time didn't care that they were, destroying the functionality of the animal. Like Dalmatians are famous for having nervous disorders and all kinds of problems.
Saint Bernards have some
Because
issues
it looks
too.
pretty and held to
Yes.
Yeah.
an aesthetic standard.
That's why
everything else.
I'm a dog lover myself. I don't live in a position at the moment where I can have a dog. When I can get a dog, what do I want? What breed I want? I want a mutt.
Yeah.
Big, friendly mutt. I don't need no spare me the purebreds and all. They're
Yeah.
not all.
Don't go to a puppy farm.
Oh God, no.
Those things are horrible.
Yeah.
It's like concentration camps for dogs.
It depends from breeder to breeder. Like if they're not doing a milling thing,
Yeah.
like certain areas are known for where it's a small
You know who's
They-
big on the puppy mills?
Amish.
Yep. Right, and this is
That's been a
particularly.
thing for like the last 15, 20 years as far as mainstream media, if I remember right.
I didn't think a lot of people knew that one. But yeah, the Amish are actually pretty big on the puppy mills. If you want to get a dog, be very careful where you go. And seriously, don't get... aside from the fact they've been bred for crazy traits to the point that they're having all sorts of issues, inbreeding is a serious problem with purebreds as well.
Really, you should adopt like a shelter dog if you can.
Adopt a shelter dog, and like I said, adopt a mutt.
Yeah.
Thing
A
is,
nice
a lot.
mixed breed of who knows what.
Well, a lot of the issues with the adoption is because a lot of the standards that they have to go through, and it's necessary standards. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. And this is only from like what I've heard my mom tell me of when like she was trying to adopt a cat from a shelter. Was they got really, really intrusive, and most people don't want to do that. If you're dealing with a mill or with a breeder, and like I said, majority of breeders, like independent breeders, and they're not part of this huge branching
Yeah.
thing. They're actually they actually typically take a decent care of their animals, and those are typically.
Amisha made a good suggestion of looking for places that are approved by the ASPCA.
Yeah, like my
Yeah,
my
makes
parents just last year got 2 Australian Shepherds, and they were always the most friendly things ever. It wasn't like you yelled at them and they would start cringing or growling or anything like that. Even though they came to us as puppies, because that's typically when they adopt them out. But they make sure that it doesn't get so much that it becomes a neglectful or abusive situation in those
That's good.
cases. And my partner, his family recently got a dachshund, a long-haired dachshund, and not dachshund, excuse me, dachshund, something like that. The little pretzel doggies.
I think they
Well,
are
we-
Dachshund.
dachshunds.
Yeah,
Dachshund.
the wiener puppies.
Amisha
And
made
he
another
was
great point.
And they look like a.
See, she's more active here than.
To
than
quote
when she's
Amisha, the ASPCA is PETA minus the crazy.
Meaning they're not killing cats for their blood to throw on people with fur coats.
Yeah.
Oh, are they doing that as well?
They've been doing that. That was the
Well,
thing they were
I
doing
know
back in
that
the 80s.
I thought it was paint that they use, not the blood. I know they kill
They
lots
switched
of
over to
of
paint
animals.
when it started becoming a scandal, but they actually their shelters for PETA
Kill
actually
more
kill
than
more
anybody.
animals. Plus, they're essentially a terrorist organization. So
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone out there listening does not know this, PETA actively, well, maybe it's debatable whether they actively engage in it, but it's a proven fact they actively support violent terror, eco-terrorism, animal liberation front, Earth First being examples of this. They also kill more animals in their shelters than anybody else, even the government. And you have to keep in mind, PETA has the firm opinion that animals should not be kept by humans as pets. Period. No exceptions.
Or used.
Yeah, or used in any way.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're crazy.
you'll see, and a lot of the videos you see some really horrible videos of like the meat industry and things like that come out from PETA. Now, most of them are true. Let me be fair, but a lot of them are 10, 20 years old.
Yeah.
They just keep
Industry standards have changed.
have improved, and the federal government looked at these videos and went, "Oh God, this is horrible." It did something about it, but they're circulating the same videos over and over to push a point.
Yeah.
And have you noticed we have really not touched on the paranormal at all?
I was just about to say that. I was like, I'm picturing somebody tuning in going, what the fuck?
Sorry, we accidentally went to politics.
Yeah, it's like, well, not even politics, but we're just talking about, this is the problem when you give us free reign.
At this
To
point,
just
we're,
talk
in,
about
we're in the
whatever-
realm of politics and what consists of a terrorist organization at
Yeah.
home. I think we have completely switched over
like-
to something we are not even supposed
Do
to
you
be
know,
focused on.
Just
Interestingly enough,
totally
U.S.
losing viewers.
U.S.
as we go.
government, or maybe we're getting more. We don't know.
Who knows?
But do you know the U.S. government
Conspiracy
doesn't
theorists.
actually formally recognize domestic terrorism?
Doesn't surprise me.
There are no laws on the books in the in federal law. There's no laws on the books for domestic terrorism because of a series of political compromises. Even though there's a couple of instances like the
Well, the
Oklahoma City bombing is a clear-cut case of terrorism,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's officially not recognized as such because
Well,
of
it's
the
why
nature of
those.
the laws.
Yeah, it's why the white supremacist groups and militia groups don't get slapped with the same terrorist label. But if it's a bunch of Middle Easterners or
Although in
or people
fairness,
from other
the
countries,
FBI freely recognizes
boom,
that
it's terrorists.
the white supremacist groups are terrorists.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the federal government.
But the government is like holding them
Congress
back
won't
from
make the law.
won't actually go after them, which is disgusting. But
Yeah, the primary terrorist threats in the United States are domestic, non-international,
yeah,
and they are, in terms of overall violence against people, it's mostly white supremacist groups and radical fringe anti-government movements like the Sovereign Citizens. And in general property damage, the ones that come pretty darn close would be the environmental extremists.
yeah.
So for anyone who's confused about this, let's be clear. There are crazy people on both sides of the political aisle.
Always have been.
Yeah.
All right, so
Ghost of Dead Pets seeking vengeance on PETA members.
there we go.
From Will.
There's a book.
I would
idea.
watch that series.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
a book idea.
There was the one haunting at the college I first went to.
Thank
That
you.
was,
Thank you for that, Will.
Malevolent spirit that appeared as a glowing ball of green to a couple friends of mine. That because it appeared in the biology department, they speculated it was the combined anger of all of the test animals and guinea pigs that were killed there over the years.
Nice. It's an idea.
I actually no, that's not true. I have had an experience with an animal spirit once.
I was just going to ask you, ghost animals. Is that a real thing? Do animals leave ghosts, and if not,
Yes, they do. It's
okay.
not common. As the late Father Joe pointed out once, because I am of the opinion that at least some animals have spirits, and I can even show you in the Bible where it says this. Because, real quick, in the Book of
Are
Revelation,
we going to do the talking donkey again?
no.
Okay, good.
Jiggity jig, hee-haw, hee-haw.
But if you read the Book of Revelation, it says that when Jesus comes back, because he's lost, Jesus is done with your shit, and is going to fix it. He shows up on a white horse, and it's like, if there are no animals in heaven, where'd the horse come from? And you have lots of people, it's like, but it just says he showed up on a white horse. It's the simplest explanation. If you're assuming he's actually physically appearing, then he's literally riding on a white horse that came from somewhere.
Yeah.
The counterpoint to this Father Joe point made to me once is, so do you want to imagine how overrun with cockroaches heaven is? If every animal has a soul,
Oh man, that's a slippery slope right there.
Or for
man.
that
Well,
matter,
that's when
even-
we go into reincarnation. On that note.
Yeah.
I've seen another explanation I do happen to like.
Cockroaches are all the souls of former politicians.
I think you're being a little hard on the cockroaches. Is my mentor's theory on the whole subject was that not every animal has a soul, but animals somebody cared about and loved deeply gain a soul. So like, random wolves out in the woods probably don't have a soul, but your favorite beloved pet, and I can't speak for what's in heaven or for that matter hell or any other afterlife or reincarnation, but the majority of animal spirits people encounter are pets. It's somebody's beloved dog. It's not a random. You don't hear among Native American tribes and other tribal groups. You'll hear stories of spirit animals, which is totems and a whole other thing.
Yeah,
But
that's
in
more
terms
spirits appearing in the form of an animal.
yeah, and there's also, I mean, the totem isn't the spirit of a wolf; it is the spirit of wolf as a concept.
Yeah, like a god wolf.
Yeah.
Well, it also depends, because even without, like actual human interaction, there are various legends and whatnot where creatures themselves have not actually had human contact, but were clearly sentient, even in those stories. And considering what the perception was that long ago, even if it was, you know, just a particular pack that it wasn't that close to an individual, it's entirely possible.
Maybe.
That, and again, it's all because then again you're going into other areas too.
Which all makes me think of my favorite ghost story.
Oh,
So this is a story from basically the grandfather of ghost hunting, Harry Price. Harry Price was an investigator in England who did a lot of cases, but by far, in my opinion, his most fascinating happened on the Isle of Wight. It was called the Your Classic Poltergeist case, weird noises, objects flying around, and a disembodied voice that would address the family. And it referred to itself as Geff. Geff was an exceptionally intelligent, talking mongoose. As is common in poltergeist cases, they almost never actually saw an apparition. The little girl saw one once and described it as a small, furry creature with a big, bushy tail, all colored yellow, which mongooses are not colored yellow, nor do they have large, bushy tails.
yeah, it's more like a squirrel.
Yeah,
Actually, it depends on the breed of mongoose.
fair enough. But
That's an animal that I have always associated myself with in general. So I have done a little bit of research. They don't usually get
Tommy.
Fight me.
But basically, her description of Geff did not match any breed of actual mongoose. To Harry Price's credit, he never experienced anything in the family's home. He just kind of wrote the story as, this is too bloody weird not to write up.
Ghost mongoose.
Talking ghost mongoose.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. In some way.
Certainly, spirits of varying types, both certainly demonic spirits in particular, and fairies as well, have a long-standing tradition of appearing as various types of animal.
That makes sense, like sort of earthbound or earth-related spirits.
Yeah.
Although the thing before I lose the thread, it occurred to me Father Joe's theory about beloved pets and whatnot. That opens up a really interesting can of worms about the nature of the soul. Wouldn't
It does.
Like if a soul could be essentially created or granted to something that previously didn't have it, it's like that really makes you wonder, okay, what is a soul then? You know, what actually clearly it's not if it's not self-awareness or consciousness or whatever, then what is it? You know?
That is a really good question, and I don't know.
Any particular theory?
I have a
favorite.
I have my personal interpretation, and I may very well be wrong, but it's as close as I can get. Which is, I think that's this. So there's a theory in philosophy, or a thought experiment in philosophy called the philosophical zombie. Have you ever heard of it?
Sort of. It sounds familiar. I'm not.
Beth, have you ever heard of it?
Remembering it.
What was the question?
Have you ever heard of the philosophical zombie?
That's actually ringing a bell, but
Yeah, just like the,
So-
brain damage.
Fair enough.
Searching for file?
Let me explain, because our listeners many of our listeners, I think we have smart listeners, so I'm betting a lot of people know what I'm talking about. So the idea is, think about a person who has all of the functions of a human being without the inner life. Like the light, the thing that makes us self-aware.
okay, like an android or
The idea is much
AI,
older,
yeah.
but basically it would be an AI. It's something or not necessarily an AI, because an AI might still have the self-awareness that we're talking about. But think about a computer program that is so cleverly designed that it can respond to questions as if it had intelligence,
which they
without
have
actually having the ability to make without the ability to reason.
Huh. Okay.
The classic example of this, of course, in computer science is the Turing test. So, but a person like this that has the, or for that matter, the way I saw it put in a discussion between a bunch of scientists by Neil deGrasse Tyson, talking about, and Bill Nye responding to Neil deGrasse Tyson, talking about the nature of consciousness and suggesting, what if I only think I'm thinking?
Yeah.
That's the inherent, currently unsolved question in psychology, neurology, and philosophy is, what is consciousness?
Yeah.
I would personally make the case that the soul, assuming it exists, and I have to accept the possibility that I'm insane, and all the experiences I think I have aren't real. But I tend to, because it's not useful to assume you're completely delusional, I tend to assume I'm not. But if the soul exists at all, I would propose that it's consciousness. And because of that, I can actually propose a way to test for the existence of the soul. We don't have the technology to do it now, but we've been working on it for decades.
Yeah.
And it's right out of your one of your favorite TV shows that I don't like very much. You know what show? Can you guess?
Would that be Star Trek?
Yes. Can you guess what technology?
Well, I have heard. Are we talking about the whole transporter?
The riddle, the inherent
riddle,
problem of the transporter.
Yeah. Does the transporter murder you
And
every time it sends you through? Yeah. If so, what happens to your soul?
Because basically, to do a transporter, you need to destroy somebody. I mean, destroy them on a subatomic level.
Yeah.
And then rebuild them somewhere else. I would propose that in this circumstance, if the consciousness is solely a creation of the body, the consciousness will move from one to the other. If it isn't, then while you may have something that's aware, it won't be the same person.
Yeah, you would be creating like a soulless zombie every time you.
But it might be a philosophical zombie that would act like it had a soul.
Yeah.
And could you tell?
Which I would love. It surprises me actually that they never sort of tried to tackle that, or at least acknowledge that idea on Star Trek. That because you always had, like in the classic show, McCoy famously didn't like the teleporter. And
he's never liked it, and they actually carried that over into Next Gen.
Yeah,
the one Doctor on Next Gen, not Crusher, but the one in
Pulaski.
Pulaski hated them too.
They tried to sort of make her very reminiscent of McCoy. It didn't quite work, but they
she didn't last long enough on the show for it to work.
No, Gates McFadden came back and they just sort of unceremoniously booted her out, which I always kind of wondered about. Like they never even mentioned her again. Like she just.
It is a little weird.
It was like, thanks for showing up for a season and taking over. Bye. But anyway.
They alternated her back and forth often enough, because I actually watched the first season again recently. But still.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, even though they had McCoy and them voice concerns about the safety and whatnot, they never did go further, because they did
a lot of episodes with the possible.
They did an episode where they showed that the warp, the whole warp technology might be like tearing fabric
of reality
and stuff, and ruining, creating these pockets.
They did one episode which I thought was very interesting, where Riker basically got cloned by a transporter accident.
Yeah, his twin brother, who showed up later, and they actually did follow up with him. He eventually became a member of the Maquis on Deep Space Nine and helped take part in like the stealing of a ship. He impersonated Riker and helped them steal a ship, and he wound up going to prison.
It is an interesting. And here's another thing to get everybody thinking. What if what we're talking about with the transporter happens to everybody? Let's see, I'm 41 now. Brian, how old are you?
43.
So it would have happened to me approximately 5 times, and you 6.
Yeah.
You know what?
Because your body recycles itself.
Every
and
cell in your
completely,
body
changes over.
recycles every 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
If our consciousness is solely a product of the atoms of the cells of our body, why is it consistent over the course of our lives? There are changes, but you're not a completely different person every 7 to 10 years.
No, I think maybe that's why, is because it's gradual, so your consciousness stays in the meat. See, I've also
The
heard
problem still being we don't
experiments
understand
they,
what consciousness is.
No, although I have heard that they did experiments where they monitored someone awake and sleeping, and there were certain like particles, like quantum particles of energy that they noticed in the conscious state that seemed to disappear when the person was asleep and then reappeared when the person
Which is
regained
one of the ways, as I understand it, and I'm by no means an expert, but as I understand it, one of the ways that they're trying to explain consciousness is by applying quantum theory to it, which
is a neat
could
idea. Like
potentially
that you
open the door back up to a spiritual reality.
Yeah, like if when you dreamed, part of your mind actually went somewhere else and then came back when you woke up.
Which would be consistent
is a
with
cool idea.
with beliefs from around the world for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you also have there was actually an Egyptian thought process back in the day, where when you went to sleep, your soul would actually leave your body for a while. And that was what
because
they called
the Egyptians
This
had
is when
like a
you're still alive.
nine-part soul.
And that cycle actually still continued on even when you passed. If your soul was still waiting to be judged.
Yeah, the
But
ka.
even beforehand, you would still, that's why you dream.
Well, that's what they thought
But yeah, it's
ghosts
also the
were.
fact you had a 9-part soul, as Brian said. The ba, the
thing, and
ka.
That's what they thought ghosts
Well, there was
were.
also, as back to your thing, because they also did something in the original series with Kirk. It was like in season 1.
The good
where
evil Kirk.
Yep.
Yep. That one,
Enemy Within.
Yeah, Enemy Within. Yeah,
Great
that's the
episode.
exact episode. And it is the same concept.
So I'm not a big Star Trek fan, but I'll admit that was a great episode.
They have had some really good thought-provoking episodes.
For my listeners, so I don't disillusion any Trekkie listeners out there, it's not that I think Trek is a bad show. It's that it's taste. It's purely a question of taste.
Yeah. I mean, some people like Stargate, and I was just never able to get into it.
Well, I prefer, on the whole, although Doctor Who's a notable exception, I prefer fantasy to science fiction.
Yeah.
Star Trek, it's on the lighter side of sci-fi often, especially with the original series.
Oh, yeah.
But Star Wars is more solidly fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's why I prefer
Star Wars is pretty
It's
much
just the
fantasy
setting
set and
that's
faced.
fact-based.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they're also a different, like somebody could actually say, based off of what you've just stated, Kevin, that you more prefer, when it comes to seeing a series or a movie or anything like that, you prefer the operatics rather than the Western in that respect, since Star Wars is considered an opera.
Yeah, it's space opera.
It's a space opera, but it's still an opera overall.
Yeah.
Whereas
Star Trek was usually a
was-
morality play or a space western.
Yeah, it's considered a Western, and that's by any science fiction
Which
or
is
fantasy
fair.
comparison. And while you can make the argument, while the others, the opposite is also true, where they could both fall into
There's
that. it's
definitely
very
Western
strongly
elements
based.
in Star Wars as well.
Oh, yeah.
Not as much, though.
True. Although, if word's true, the Solo movie coming out in 2 months is going to be very space Western.
Yeah. Well, Han
It really
Solo
needs
is
to be a space Western.
Han Solo is a very Westernish sort of character.
It's like there's no way to do that movie
He's
properly.
a smuggler. Of
Yeah.
course it's going to be a more Western feel to it.
Yep.
It's not going to have the 3 major arcs, more than likely, that compromise what the original trilogy was.
Yep. And the other thing that you run with to Star Wars very much is Star Trek is a vision of the future. There, parts of it are very, especially the original series gets very philosophical.
Yeah.
And that, which is one of the reasons, that's why there's a lot more, I think, in the original series I like.
And also why we have cell phones, everybody.
Interesting.
Yes.
But it's still a vision, it's a utopian vision of the future.
Yeah.
Especially with Next Gen. Was that very much
Well,
Roddenberry's vision of a utopian future?
Yeah.
Star Wars is more myth. A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
Long ago long, long ago.
Well, Star
far,
Wars
far
is
away.
samurais.
Yeah.
It was based on George
It was
Lucas loving
based on samurais.
Kurosawa movies.
It was based on a little bit
Yeah,
on
Joseph
the
Campbell.
it was very much based on Joseph Campbell. It's based on King Arthur.
Yeah.
It's more of a myth in space. It's not an
Especially
attempt to
the
represent
yeah.
any version of future.
No, especially the first three movies. They're kind of
Yeah.
the purest Star Wars, in my opinion, and that's where
Well,
you
they
see
are
the
originals.
the
that's why.
strongest mythical elements. Yeah.
Although I think they're bringing it back reasonably well with the new trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing that Abrams has done is that he recognized what was awesome about the original movies, and he's emphasizing that again.
They're doing it very well with the animated series as well. The most recent episode of Rebels and some of the episodes of Clone Wars really get into the the Force is a mysterious, magical thing. It's not just a science that you can understand with midichlorians.
No midichlorians.
We're coming up on, we're past the half-hour mark, so I do want to give out the number again, 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492.
Yeah. Also, I think Will asked another couple of things he was asking about.
Oh, yeah, he asked about gremlins.
So what are gremlins? What do you think? That's a popular.
That's an
fun
interesting
topic.
question.
Yeah, we haven't touched on that.
Oh, that
Do you
was
think
fun.
they're fairies?
I think, it depends on what you mean by. There's the modern idea of gremlins, then there's the actual historical gremlins for the Second World War.
Yeah.
The modern idea of gremlins, I think, are fairies, if they're anything.
Not Chinese creatures that multiply in water.
Well,
And never, ever feed them
Never
after
feed them.
midnight.
no, you don't feed them after midnight. That's when they turn to gremlins. If you get them wet in Mogwai or in gremlin form, that's when they multiply.
They reproduce, yeah.
And sunlight kills them just like vampires.
Yep.
Well, they just can't stand bright lights. It's just they're more susceptible when they are in gremlin form as opposed to Mogwai because they have the fur to protect them. I have seen this movie way too much.
Yeah.
Still one of the truly great Christmas movies.
Oh my God, that movie's ridiculous. That movie's so much fun, though.
In my opinion, a lot of the greatest holiday movies are not things normal people associate. Like
No, Die Hard. Die Hard is like my favorite Christmas movie.
Nightmare
That
Before
is the greatest
Christmas.
Christmas movie.
Yeah. As,
Great Christmas movie, great Halloween movie. It works either way.
As I saw, like it was a great Facebook meme that went around. It was like, it's not really Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off the top of Nakatomi Plaza. That's just such a cool sentiment. It's so weird, but it's awesome.
And they weren't Christmas movies. It's not
Nope.
even close to Christmas.
Nope.
So about gremlins.
Gremlins.
So yes,
Gremlins 2, yay.
the original Gremlins from World War II are really interesting.
Yeah, they had that. They touched on that in not Friday, the Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone, the movie,
Yeah, where
and in
they-
the TV series as well.
Yeah, where they were attacking the
Yeah, because
airplanes.
that was another Shatner episode.
Yes,
Yep.
that was a great
Well,
great old
the
Shatner
great bit-
performance.
Great bit there is so in the original TV series it was William Shatner. In Twilight Zone, the movie, it's John Lithgow.
Yeah.
In
Oh
Third
my God,
Rocket
he's-
from the Sun, the first time, one of the times William Shatner shows up as the big giant head who's the boss.
Yeah.
He's like, he gets off of the plane, which is how he got to where they all are, even though he's a space alien. He's like, it was horrible. I looked out the window, and there was this horrible monster on the wing of the plane. And it's like, and Lithgow's like, I saw it too.
Yeah. That show was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I've
They
seen
they
a
did
couple of
so many
episodes.
great references. Oh, you should watch it. There's a fantastic episode.
Really wanna see my watch list?
George Takei's "Oh My," his famous "Oh My" comes from Third Rock from the Sun.
Nice.
He plays himself, and he's at a Star Trek convention, and the family winds up there, and through a series of misadventures, I forget what happens, but they wind up like he's trying to check out at the same time they're doing their shenanigans.
Oh, do I look relaxed?
Oh, and then yeah, and George Takei's all freaked out, and at one point John Lithgow like knocks over his luggage, and it opens up, and they see that George Takei's been stealing like a bunch of hotel towels, and he just looks up and goes, "Oh my!"
Well, to be fair, to quote a Barney Miller episode, when they asked why the non-smoking cleaning lady was taking everything from people's hotel rooms in this really swank hotel, oh, everybody takes those.
Yeah, no, good show.
So you were saying, Kevin?
Okay,
Trying to keep
so
you guys on track. For
Yeah, we're on Third Rock from
I'm
the
done.
sun.
And we're
I'm
down
done
to
with
15
Twitter.
minutes.
I can keep you guys on track.
Nah.
So, if anyone doesn't know, during the Second World War, pilots, particularly in Britain, saw weird, disfigured men walking on the wings of their planes and screwing with the engines, which is basically where we get the word gremlin from. As to what they were, I really don't know. I've wondered myself. I mean, are they some type of spirit? Are they some type of cryptid? Are they just weird shit pilots saw? Because the thing is, especially during World War II, there's a lot of crazy things that pilots saw in the skies.
Yeah, the original Foo
considering
Fighters.
how high they were going, and it's not as if they had proper ventilation or
Yep.
anything for breathing.
It's-
Some of it could have been hallucination.
It's likely that some of it was.
One theory, as far as something else you touched on, is possibly Fae. It's entirely possible a sky creature of some kind, in
Air elementals.
something
Yay.
like that. However, what I find intriguing is that how the gremlin myths have grown since that point. I'm not looking.
Chaos or entropy made real.
We got you got a compliment. Will
You're cracking the whip. Good job.
Yeah, he says Beth is cracking the whip. Good job. So I'll just pass that along to you there.
Excellent, thank you. Like even to like modern devices today, like even at work, because I work in a call center, everybody. When anything goes down, it's like, oh, the gremlins are at it again, or the little men are upset we didn't leave out any milk for them. Like we've had people that say that on occasion, and I'm just sitting there going, no, they don't interfere with software. That's a different breed entirely. However, I actually found out when my mom started dating her current husband because he had a motorcycle. They actually have these little bells that you put on underneath of a new car or something, but it has to be gifted to you, and it's supposed to stay shiny. And what it does is it captures a gremlin's attention, and when it falls off, that means it's warded off all it could. It's kind of like the evil eye motif, where when it's taken as much as it could, it breaks off, and that's when you get a new one.
Nice.
But the thing is, you can't buy it for yourself.
Somebody has to
work.
give it to you.
It has to be given as a gift for your own protection.
A number of protection things are like that.
There's another topic. Well, we could do a whole day on like fairies and fae legends and stuff.
Yep.
That would be worth
I've also
exploring.
been doing a lot of extra research on Hindu, Shinto,
Well, there
and
we go.
Taoist mixtures recently.
Nice.
So
So yeah,
Which
let's-
is, of course, one of the things you run into, and we'll get into this soon.
Yeah, let's do that for one time, and I'll make sure to see. I need to know ahead of time because I can read up on it and be.
So you
be
just have to
sharp.
keep
no
reading up
fun.
on as many different topics as you can to prepare.
Well, that way I can at least speak on some of the stuff.
When I
you know.
get my book collection back from the old co-host, I can always lend it to you and to stack about yay high of suggested reading.
Oh wait, it's
Nice.
actually taller than Brian? Like I'm not surprised, but it's only a little bit taller than Brian.
only sitting.
Well, it's not
down.
the whole collection, parts of which have been lost, parts of which are buried in various boxes. And it's particular highlights. I put together. It's like, okay, here's you want to go ghost hunting with me? Here's a basic reading list.
Which is going to be mandatory for you, Brian.
Yes, Beth mentioned milk, which is an old way of course, appeasing fae, is leaving out milk, bread, honey.
Yes,
Still practiced often in Europe and in
certain
England.
cakes, too.
Ireland. Yeah.
Often by people that don't even realize why they're doing it anymore.
Well, no, they realize why they're doing it. They're just not. They just don't know which ones they're giving it to. It's also why there's still homes to this day. It's not as prevalent as it used to be, but they will actually make little extra doorways and whatnot and paths that go through the house.
I've heard of that. Yeah, like
so
fair,
the Fae parade
The
can
Fae
go
paths.
through.
fairy doors.
Because if you build on top of it and you don't give them away,
Your life's about to go
it's worse than the
hell.
poltergeist, especially when it's the royal procession.
Oh, Lord.
There have been a couple of cases
Well-
where nothing works.
Which is one of the fun things you run. Well, actually, usually what works is you give them a path.
Yeah, that's the quickest way. And
Or you find out some other way of making an apology. The one country club that had exactly that problem solved it by building a very beautiful, very fancy, very expensive garden.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, the Fae had somewhere else they wanted to play.
talked about that. That's pretty cool.
yeah, no, they're and the thing is, one of the main things is whether you're in the physical realm or if you're spectral, traveling, what have you. It doesn't. necessarily just apply to the Fey realm, but it's very
Yeah.
important for the Fey realm. Don't go off the path. And
Yeah.
Here's the problem with the path, though, because I've been there. Funny story, but not enough time for that.
You've
but,
been to the Fey realm?
We've got
just
about 10
because-
minutes, yeah.
But which funny story in and of itself. But the path itself, just because you see a path there, doesn't mean that's actually the path. The path itself actually goes off, but you can't see a real cutoff. You actually have to be familiar with it in some fashion.
Yeah,
Fun.
Will also accurately pointed out with respect to them that the Fae and Gypsies are two groups you don't want to mess with.
The Fae, the Gypsies, shamans in general, or
Yeah.
pretty much any.
I know enough
religious-
about Romani magic traditions that
Yeah.
Yeah,
they know
my-
what they're
my
doing about
sister-
making your life really unpleasant.
Yeah, no, my sister is a Hellenic priestess of well over 20 years, and she also knows various magics and whatnot, and knows there's a proper way to do it. Like, if you're in a pinch, there's time to fudge, but if it's really important, you keep as exact to what you're looking for as possible.
Well, anyone who traditionally, and it's one of my irritations, but traditionally, anyone who practices any kind of healing or positive magic has to have a working whether they don't need to practice it, but they need a working familiarity with the negative, because if you want to fight the negative, you have to understand how it works.
She does, and that's the thing, and I completely understand your gripe, because I've come across a lot of Miss Fuzzy Bunny slipper
Oh, yeah.
followers. And if
I
anyone's
didn't.
not sure
From
of-
what you said of your sister and knowing you, it's like I don't think she's a fuzzy bunny.
No, but I understand your pet peeve, because it's
Yeah.
one of mine too.
But most people that know what they're doing really can't stand the fuzzy bunnies.
Yeah, no. And if people didn't hear my rant from a couple weeks ago, if you follow Silver Raven Wolf, burn your supplies, and you're better off going to church. However, if you're actually serious, there's a lot of other better.
You know, there are
things.
better.
It's Dr. Seuss for the faith to a degree, but Dr. Seuss is still better for reading, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It's good for a hook.
But yeah, that's the thing to keep in mind, and it goes for me too, folks. It's like anyone who practices fighting nasty things knows how to do some nasty things too. If the Christians in my audience don't believe me, go online, go on to Google, look up imprecatory psalm. The Psalms, of course, being a very famous series of prayers written in the Bible. The imprecatory psalms are psalms designed to curse your enemies through God's authority. They're not something to use lightly. In fact, one of the most benign ways I know of them being used is rabbis use them as a form of exorcism. Because it's like, if you want to get rid of a demon, calling down divine wrath is a good place to start.
Just be prepared for the whiplash if you do not, get
Yeah.
yourself. Even when you get yourself prepped for any kind of energy work, whether it's an exorcism,
Yeah.
you're doing healing work, what have you, it's going to drain you, especially if it's
Very
your
true.
first time doing it, because it's a different. If it's a
Welcome
different
to
set
yet
of
another
energy
reason
switch.
why I always say don't do it yourself. Exorcisms are a bad idea.
You always have to have at least some person there to watch your vitals, because
Yeah.
it can go very south very quickly.
Yeah, people have died performing exorcisms. And the really crazy do not try this at home, kids. Which is an exorcism of people. Not only you might die, the person you're performing an exorcism on very easily can die. It happens.
I've heard of that.
It usually gets written off as heart attacks, strokes.
Wasn't that something with
Annalise Michelle,
I would
Emily
that was
Rose.
I was thinking Emily Rose, but I think that was the dramatized name.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, because it was based on the court
The
documents
court
or
case,
whatever.
because they had somebody who was
Because
there for an exorcism, and they said
actually-
the medicine she was on would have kept it from going through properly, whereas it's like doctors can
no.
only do it. That's
Okay.
that's what I remember from the movie. I didn't actually look into that particular
Yeah.
exorcism.
Well,
to be fair.
here's the thing. One, my mentor, the late Lou Gentili, was an advisor for that movie. He's actually the one who suggested that they make it as about the court case instead of the exorcism. But what you run into there is what actually happened is the woman. Basically, the reason she ultimately died is she stopped eating. And the parents and the priests were charged with manslaughter because she was being denied food. I do not know all of the particulars of the actual case, but I do know this. I've read the actual and don't ask about how I have access to things I'm not supposed to have access to, but I have actually read the full Catholic Rituals of Exorcism. Fasting is an important part of the ritual of exorcism for the priest.
Yeah.
No priest properly performing the ritual would ever have the victim of a possession fast. That's counterproductive.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you want them
Yeah,
weakened?
no, if anything, that makes the body weaker, which is
Exactly.
the root that you need. That's your ground, essentially, especially for anybody who's not initiated in energy work. That is your ground in order to pull and push out while the exorcism is going on.
Also, as for all I know, Annalise Michelle is one of the reasons, but it is very much standard practice within the Catholic Church. If you're going to have an exorcism of a person take place, they want a doctor present. Because malnutrition and, if you're on psychiatric meds, you shouldn't be going off your psychiatric meds.
No,
Exactly.
you shouldn't be. And
all that pea soup flying around.
I nor the majority of exorcists are not psychiatrists. They're not qualified to give medical advice. But legitimate exorcists work with psychiatrists. They do not tell you to anyone who tells you to stop taking your psychiatric meds because you got a demon, be really leery of that person. In fact, not so secret. One of the surest signs that somebody is not possessed, if somebody is on psychiatric medication and the medication is working, it's not possession.
Right.
You cannot treat possession with psychiatric medication. That is not to say, just because medication doesn't work does not make it possession. But if the medication works, it's never possession.
Right. Oh,
Or at least almost never.
by the way, Will says that you deserve a raise. By the way, so we're doubling your salary.
I'm feeling generous.
Effective immediately.
We're going to quadruple your salary.
Yes.
excellent. Thank you. Those zeros look lovely.
4 times 0 is still 0, but there
But
you
it's
go.
4 zeros, so it
But
looks
now it's
bigger.
4 zeros. So there you go, Will. just for you.
In fact, we'll have his salary.
Aw,
So you have half a zero.
I get half of nothing.
It's a baby zero.
It's a
Congratulations.
little-
And we're multiplying my salary by 100, which is still 0.
Oh, we're still just starting out.
Yeah, which reminds me, since we're coming up on the end of the show, I want to thank everybody for listening.
Yes.
If you have questions, comments, and concerns that you can't bring up on the show, if you have a guest you would like to suggest or you think you yourself would be an interesting guest, please feel free to reach out. You can reach us on Facebook by looking up The Paranormal Encyclopedia. You can email me at kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com.
I mean,
Kevin?
obviously, you can see what happens when we don't have a guest, so please,
kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com. If you happen to like what we're doing and you are feeling generous, you have a couple of bucks, burn a hole in your pocket and you don't know what else to do with, feel free to go over to patreon.com/demonology, patreon.com/demonology, and take a little money of our way so we can keep the lights on and potentially start paying people.
it'd be nice.
Yeah, it would.
If you just want to read a good book, go to brianmckinleyauthor.com. That's where my stuff is.
And for more sass and
Shameless
everything
plug.
else, you can always hit me up. I can always snark at you when you want.
There you go. Yeah, Beth gives like free snark.
And remember to tune in to us, of course, next week's Thursday, 6:30 to 7:30 here on our home Hamilton Radio.
Yes. Do we have a preview for what next week is?
I don't think we don't have a guest scheduled. Do we want to pick a topic now? Let's do fairies.
We could do fairies.
We could do fairies. We could do various
We had
cross
St.
spirits
Patrick's
and everything.
Day just not long ago.
I thought St. Patrick's Day was coming up.
It's in 2 weeks.
Oh, well, there we go. That's even better.
So we'll do fairies and St. Patrick's Day because they kind of go together.
Yeah, St.
Do we-
Patrick. You
Okay.
have all those
So,
Leprechaun,
so
yeah.
are we doing that next week or are we doing that week of?
Let's do it next week.
Yeah.
Barring getting a guest or some other plan, as it stands, our plan will be St. Patrick's Day and fairies will be next week. Remember to tune in on Facebook to find out if we do line up a guest, and you can also suggest topics if you have something you particularly want to listen to us babble about for an
Yes.
hour. But that's going to do it for tonight. This is Kevin Mears, your host, saying good night and God bless. And
Night.